Well, they've finally done it. Elite Random TFOs are coming this Tuesday for the 14th anniversary event. Just a forewarning, it's going to be rough. So I'm putting together a little bit of a guide here to explain some stuff to kind of help prepare people for some Elite TFOs, and I'll do some other videos in the future probably, but this will just be a kind of overview of how everything works. So first of all, random TFOs by nature mean that you're going to get both ground and space TFOs, any TFO that's in the random list. This means you need to be flexible. Use a ship or build that is effective in multiple TFOs, and remember that teamwork is not optional here. It's in your best interest to help your teammates if you want to get the reward. Unlike advanced TFOs, most of those little mission objectives that pop up over on the side actually have to be completed. If you miss an optional or you don't complete something within the time limit, a lot of times it will fail the mission and you get only 10 marks and no dilithium. And you can fail stuff a good ways into the run. So you don't want to be 15 minutes into a TFO and fail the optional, because it's just all wasted time, both for you and all your teammates. And let's face it, some people are going to queue who aren't quite ready for elites. Maybe you're watching this video and you're not quite ready, or maybe you are ready but you don't have the experience yet, and that's completely okay. You might fail a few, you might die a few times, and that's okay. Just strive to improve and fix whatever the problem is, and just keep getting better at it. What this also means, though, for those of you who do know how to play Elite TFOs or have the gear or the means to do this, you ideally want to build a ship or ground build that can help, for lack of a better term, carry other players in a way, and kind of improve the entire team's performance. And if you're one of those players who says stuff like, "It's not my job to help another player," or stuff like that, then elite random TFOs are not going to be for you, and just stick to your private teams in that case. So, preparing to participate in elite TFOs, and I'm not going to go super in-depth on individual builds in this video. If you know how to make builds, then you can pretty much build for any ship and it's unnecessary, but I will do a couple of sample builds at some point in the future. For now, I'd encourage you to look at various build resources online, such as the STO Builds Discord or the STO Builds Reddit page, or join a fleet or community that has a Discord or a forum or something like that. There's quite a few of these around with help sections and that kind of thing, meant exactly for this purpose. And what's great about those is you can actually get involved in the discussion. You can show where your build is currently at, what gear you have access to, and get some useful personalized advice. I think a lot of people just ask for generic advice, or they share a picture that's not detailed enough of their build, and they just get these canned responses or links, and it can be frustrating, and I get that, but you have to give enough information to get good advice. And that will also help you come up with a roadmap for future builds. You know, if someone says, oh, the only thing you're missing is this console or this trait or whatever, then you know in the future that's what you can start working towards. So with that in mind, remember that previous guides written for elite content are all done with the mindset that you're going to have a preset team, usually with specific roles. So if an elite team is going to do infected space, then pretty much everybody who's done one of those knows that you have one person is the tank, and then the other four are some form of either a DPS or support, nanny, or debuffer or whatever. And guides written for that run have that in mind. If you do random elites, you're going to end up with 5 completely random players. So if you end up with 5 players trying to do nannying, or 5 players trying to do crowd control or something like that, you're going to have a hard time. You're probably going to fail. And it's not your fault. The game doesn't do any matchmaking, or there's no lobby where you can discuss beforehand. When you queue for random, you just get accept or decline, you know? So keep that in mind, because those guides will be helpful, but they won't apply one-to-one to this random team composition, which is why I mentioned about building a versatile, like a carry build or something that's adaptable to multiple situations. And you can do that either with multiple loadouts or just making one loadout that applies to a lot of different scenarios. And speaking of builds a little bit more, you can't just run whatever you want. There's definitely still room for innovating or customizing your builds and doing theme builds and Space Barbie and all that stuff, but the tolerances are being tightened here. You don't have as much leeway. You can't just float around at 10 impulse speed, not doing objectives and dying in 1 or 2 hits. Like, I see people like that all the time in advanced TFOs, and it's fine. You're not really hurting anybody, but in Elite, you can't do that. You have to actually contribute to the team. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saving some frustration for both you and your teammates. Stick to advance until you have your build ironed out a little bit. You don't have to fly a super expensive meta build or a cookie cutter build to do Elites. We're really spoiled for choice, but it does help if you work around a framework or something that's been proven to work in Elite content first, and then you can kind of innovate from there, rather than starting from the ground up and trying to invent something that doesn't have a real world application. So, and last comment on this, I promise, if you do go to those Discords or Reddit pages and you share your build, please share your entire build, not just the equipment that is on it. It doesn't matter if you have all gold Mark 15 weapons and warp core and shields or whatever. That is a tiny part of your build. We need to know your bridge officer stations and your DOF active duty officers and your traits and specializations and that kind of stuff to give you useful advice. I've seen players who were better equipped than me putting out 1/10 the amount of damage because even though they had the right gear, they had some kind of problem with their bridge officer stations. I see this all the time. People have like 6 fire modes and no attack patterns and multiple emergency power abilities and no cooldown method and just all sorts of just crazy stuff. You've got to share that information too so that you can get advice to fix it. There's actually a really cool post I found on Reddit deep in the comments that F from STO Builds shared. It's like 10 Commandments style of STO builds, and I think it's really funny, but also it's great advice. So I'll flash that up on the screen here. You can pause and look at it, but I'll put a link to the comment in the description so you can read it. It's very useful knowledge to absorb. So there are a few things you can do to make your life easier before you start participating in Elite TFOs. And the first thing is you are going to die, probably. Most players are going to die multiple times. It just happens in Elite TFOs unless you're 100% the dedicated tank every single run, which admittedly might be the best way for a lot of people to get into Elite, is just to start off with a tank and just be the tank. And then from there you can branch out. But either way, run over to your ship equipment vendor, and there's a ground officer that sells the same type of stuff. And you want to go to purchase consumables, and then these minor and major components. Buy literally like 100 stack of this is only 25,000 EC. And 100 stack of the major components is 200,000. So that's one patrol worth of grinding, and you can have basically the rest of your STO career covered forever. Ship injuries come in 3 varieties. There's minor, major, and critical. You can only buy repair parts for minor and major. But once you buy these, you can just dump them into your bank. Not account bank, only character bank. But as you see here in my bank, I have these minor, major, and critical components. Minor, major, and critical regenerator. And that is allowing me to repair my ship even while I'm in a TFO. So if I die, I just immediately repair my ship before I go back into combat. All you have to do is click repair, and it will just use the one that's in your bank. For the critical components, the best way to do that is when you get one as a random drop, just stick it in the top of your inventory and then mark it as protected so you don't sell it, and let that stack grow a little bit. I let mine grow up to 100 something, and then just dump that in your bank when you're done with it. And then you can repair critical stuff. Do not be that person that goes to the exchange and buys, like, I don't even know how much these cost, but they're always ridiculous. Oh, actually pretty cheap right now. But not for the ground version. 762,000 for a critical regenerator on ground. That's ridiculous. So just make your own stack from playing the game naturally instead of inflating someone else's wallet. You also can repair your ship for free in a social zone by going to this ship repair thing, and there's a ground equivalent in the medical bay, wherever that is on DS9. Yeah, here we go. Treat officers, treat injuries, and then you can repair. But you can't do these while you're in a TFO. You have to do these in a social zone. So you want to have those components to allow you to repair mid-TFO. And if you... The way that injuries work, the more injuries you have, the more likely you are to get a more serious one. If you have a bunch of minor injuries, you're more likely to get a major or critical injury. So every time you die, repair your injuries immediately. That way you never have to use the more expensive, difficult to get critical components or critical regenerator. And if you want to be a super team player, you can buy these impossible devices. Basically, you can target a teammate and remove an injury from them if they didn't bring components or they don't have components in their bank. It does hold them for 3 seconds, so they'll be locked sitting still. So don't use this on someone in combat. That's kind of a troll move. I'm sure someone, now that I've said that, will do that. But, you know, if you're sitting in the spawn and you notice a teammate that has a bunch of injuries, you can help them out a little by using this on them. Okay, so that's the first one. Number 2, build guides you've read in the past are usually going to lead towards raw damage. So in advanced content, you can just kill everything so fast that you don't have to worry about them really shooting back. And that isn't the case for most elite content. Really high-end elite content, tanks don't actually do that much tanking because the run is so fast that you don't take as much damage. But if you're in a random TFO and everybody's kind of middle damage-ish, that run is going to take a longer amount of time, and therefore you will take more incoming damage. So keep that in mind, especially if you're a tank player. But even if you're not the tank, if you're in a random TFO and there's no tank, you're going to have to be able to take some hits. You can't do that pure damage, no attention at all paid to heals or resistances thing that you can do in PvE. And there's some really cheap options. You know, I talk about this in my PvP videos all the time. Colony consoles, Pax Triburnium, these things are literally free. So just get them. And even if you don't use them on your build, carry them in your inventory or something. In case you get a TFO and everyone's dying, take the initiative to then be that player that's like, okay, I will be the tank now and help my teammates stay alive a little bit longer so we can actually win this. A more balanced build is going to be more valuable here. And keeping with that, I wrote a whole post about this on the SGO Builds Reddit, and I'm a little bit out of touch on some of the latest developments on this, and I need to go back and either edit it or rewrite it. But like, here's an example. History will remember, right? This is fine if you're the tank and you're using it for threat generation, but if you're just a random player, you're just there, you're not the tank. This stacks up to 30% Cat 1 damage. That's fine. That's a fine trait, 30% damage. But if you did, I'm going to use, I mean, this one's more expensive, but just an example, superior area denial. That's negative 30 damage resistance rating to any target you hit during scatter volley or fire at will. And there's ways to game this too. You can use scatter volley and then immediately beam overload, and your beam overload hit applies the debuff. Negative 30 debuff is more valuable to your team than 30% damage, which only helps you. So debuffing the enemy improves everyone's damage against them. So there's a couple of TFOs where raw damage is really, really critical, and I just encourage you to keep this kind of thing in mind. Even something as simple as, like, I run this. Attack pattern beta 1 is negative 30 damage resistance rating to any target you hit, and this is 100% uptime. You put this on, you have your cooldown method right, you're always debuffing every target you hit all the time. Everyone benefits from this. So this is more valuable than if I replace this with some other selfish, ability. Focused assaults, like, it's okay. It's not the best, but that's another good option, is it increases the bonus damage of all allies attacking the target. And that includes hanger pets as well. And so does attack pattern beta, target debuff by beta. So just keep that in mind. The second one, since I'm on this build anyway, I guess I'll keep talking about it, is speed. So emergency powered engines, and ideally your competitive engines, and in your duty officer roster, you buy this Phoenix officer, the con officer. When you use emergency to engines, it instantly recharges evasive maneuvers. You don't necessarily have to run all of those things, but I would highly recommend it. There are a lot of TFOs where you have to go do something, run a particle or go close a portal or something like that, where being able to move quickly is critical to not failing the run. So another good team help one is Suppression Barrage. Suppression Barrage 3, which I don't actually have unlocked here, but Suppression Barrage 3, every target you hit, it reduces their damage output by 50%. So you can have the amount of damage that your team takes, especially if you're using, like, fire at will or something, if you have a command ship. So that's a really good one. Gravity well or control effect. There are TFOs like Zenkethi Front comes to mind, where they keep spawning in, heading towards the Starbase. And if the Starbase dies, you all fail. And most teams won't have enough damage to just blow all those ships up. In advance, you can just fly by and blow all those ships up, and then you're safe for the next 20 seconds or however long it takes for them to respawn. In Elite, you don't have that luxury. So a well-placed gravity well, one that is far away, that keeps the enemies out of range, can be very effective. So that's a useful team ability. Kind of important note related to placement of control abilities and that kind of thing: do not use delayed overload cascade or overwhelming force or photonic shockwave or any of those things that just splay enemies out all over the place. That makes the TFO actively harder for your team and might even make you fail. I mean, I played one. This was like 2 years ago, but I remember when they gave away codes for the Mata Raptor, and everyone had overwhelming force all of a sudden. There was a guy in our Zenkethi Front run using it, and he just kept shooting ships just all over the map. They'd be like 20 or 30 kilometers away, and we'd be flying around trying to kill them so we could actually do the run. And one of them got blown past behind us and nobody saw it, and actually killed the Starbase behind us and we failed. I mean, just don't do stuff like that. And again, unless you really know what you're doing, or you're in a TFO where it doesn't matter or something, I guess. But in most cases, just don't do that. Another way to help is using team heals or team-wide buffs, things like unified engineering or team synergy, which is cheap. You can get it for 1,300 Zen if you buy the Gem Hadar starter bundle. Where is that? This one. So this ship comes with team synergy, which every ally within 10 kilometers, when you use Eng team, science team, or tactical team, they get basically a miniature copy of that. It doesn't provide a huge amount of healing, but it does clear debuffs. We use this trait and tac team to prevent Borg boarding parties from screwing up timers and stuff in Elite DPS runs. Engineering and science team, and this trait is a staple of PvP because it clears subsystem offline effects and sub-nukes and other things like that. So for 1,300 Zen, this is a pretty good buy. And there's lots of other ones, Jubilant Cadence or Fleet Maneuver Gamma or stuff like that. And my last note is in regards to specializations. So there are some specializations that also benefit your team. For example, the command primary spec boosts morale, which works on both space and ground, removes all debuffs for 4 seconds when you activate it. So if you're playing an Elite TFO and you have command as your primary spec, you can hit your boost morale button. If you see a bunch of orange debuff icons on your teammates, you can hit this and you can clear off plasma fires or Borg shield neutralizers, that kind of thing, off your team every minute. So this is very effective, and it also applies a negative 25 damage resistance debuff for 10 seconds every 30 seconds. So that's a good one. And specializations, so speaking of the random thing again, once you're in a TFO map, you can't change specialization. You can change everything else about your build, traits and equipment and stuff, but your specializations you're stuck with. So if you're doing if you're reading a guide and it says bug hunt elite, you should run commando spec. Well, yeah, that's true, but commando doesn't do anything for space, and the likelihood of getting a space TFO is a lot higher than ground. So maybe it doesn't make sense to run commando in random TFOs, unless you're okay with only having one, specialization on your space build. So something to keep in mind. The third thing I want to talk about, and I've mentioned this many times on Reddit, and I was actually working on a video to go into more detail, but kind of felt pointless, so I didn't really do it. But I'll briefly touch on it here. But Elite enemies don't use any different abilities than advanced or normal. The only difference in Elite TFOs versus advanced or normal is that the enemies have more HP, and sometimes the enemy that spawns in a certain spot, either there'll be more of them or the class of enemy will be upgraded. For example, I think in Infected Normal, the first ship is a Borg cube, and then in Infected Elite, the first ship is a tactical cube. So it's just an upgrade to that ship. But a Borg cube in Normal uses the same exact abilities as a Borg cube on Elite. The only difference is the Elite version has more HP and therefore more time to deal damage. There is a higher base damage increase, but it's not that different. The main difference is that in Normal, you're probably going to blaze through it in, 60 seconds or less. In Elite, that same enemy might have 3 or 4 minutes to shoot you. So even though they're not dealing that much more damage, they're going to deal 3 or 4 times as much because they have more time to shoot you because it takes you longer to kill them. Okay, number 4, be a team player. If you see a teammate who's struggling, help them out if you can. Everyone should have their in-game team chat visible and actually use it to communicate. You can bind keys to say predetermined things or call targets, that kind of thing. But don't be afraid to type in there, what do I do? Or I need some help on my side, or I'll run particles, who's defending the starbase, etc. You have to actually organize this stuff to some degree, and some of it will be fluid. If you play the same run 50 times or whatever, you kind of learn what to do. But if you're not sure, don't be afraid to ask. All right, number 5, controls. Everyone has their own preferences on keybinds and that kind of thing. I have my own video up on keybinds. It's a little more PvP oriented, but still viable in Elite. I use the same keybind for everything: PvP, PvE, Elite, Advanced, whatever. But there are a few settings that are pretty universal that you should set them a certain way. And the easiest way to do this is just bring up your options screen in space and navigate to the control tab, or make sure that your region is set to space. And on this screen, there's 5 absolutely critical things that you can't miss. So the first one, only attack if target selected. This should be off. Basically, if you have some enemy targeted and you get them, they appear up in this top center section of your screen. If you don't have something targeted, you still want to be able to fire your weapon. Sometimes you just want the game to attack anything in range, and that's what that setting does. The next one is never auto-target objects and never auto-target pets. These should both be on. There is zero reason, outside of a few niche cases in PvP, to target pets or objects in this game. And just to be clear, like when you do Infected or whatever, those nanite generators are not objects. They're still just regular targetable enemies. So objects are like photonic fleets and sensor platforms and sensor disruption pylons and competitive consumable stuff. So none of that stuff ever appears in PvE. Just set that to on. Pets. If you're attacking an enemy that has hanger pets, just kill the main enemy. Don't waste your time shooting hanger pets. They're not dealing very much damage anyway. They're not doing anything at all. If you kill the parent ship, all of the pets immediately despawn. So you should never be targeting pets. Like, ever, basically. Target threatening enemies first should be off. There are lots of TFOs, I keep using Infected as the example, but if you are attacking the actual mission objective, which is destroy the transformer, and you have target threatening enemies and select attacker if attacked on, you could get pinged by one little hit by a probe off behind you or something, and the game is going to target that random ship off behind you and slow you down. You're trying to complete the objective by destroying the transformer, so make sure that those are not on so you can focus on the actual objective. And the very last one is the auto attack mode. You want this on target change cancels. If you put it on never cancels or non-combat cancels or auto attack, that's fine if you're just like AFK farming or something. But there are TFOs like Battle of Procyon 5, where you have to stop firing your weapons, or Borg Disconnected. You have to stop firing your weapons to activate an object. You have to stop firing and stop taking damage. So if you set this to target change cancels, and in my case, I have click unselects target, but you can also just hit escape. If you have something targeted and you're attacking it, and you need to activate some portal or whatever, you can just hit escape, and your weapons will stop firing, and you can complete your objective. Don't depend on someone else to do the objectives for you, right? This is Random Elites. We all know how difficult it can be sometimes working with random teammates. Be the type of player that does the objectives. Please. So, speaking of objectives, it's a really simple game, and there are only 3 types of TFO mechanics that are actually used by the game. Each TFO can consist of multiple phases, and each phase can use a mechanic or sometimes 2 mechanics combined, but there's only 3. So let me lay those out. Number one is damage or ungated DPS, which is basically just kill all the enemies, and once everything is dead, it's over. Or alternatively, kill all the enemies continuously, but if you don't kill them within a time limit, you lose. Either way, you just have to kill the enemies as quickly as possible. So that's type 1. Type 2 is a time-gated damage section. This one, the enemies just continuously spawn in over and over and over again, and you just have to kill them as they spawn in until the timer runs out. In advanced and normal content, you can literally deal like a few hits and then go hide in the corner and like go to the bathroom or have a sandwich or like whatever. It doesn't matter, because you're just running out of clock. And that's why people get so fed up with like defensive Starbase 1, for example. Once you kill the first, you just blow up the first ship and then you can literally just leave. It doesn't matter. Which is frustrating for players who are actually trying to play the game, obviously. So don't be that person. But also give us content that is engaging so that we don't feel like we want to do that. Anyway, type 3 is interactive or objectives. So this is anything where you have to fly up and press your action key. By default, it is F on PC. I have no idea what it is on console. But you have to interact with something. Close a portal, pick up an item, that sort of thing. And the game doesn't have any kind of like wipe mechanic or failure mechanic if your team dies. If you're in a time-gated damage phase, and your entire team dies multiple times, even all at once, it doesn't matter. It won't fail you unless it's one of those ones that's like, you must protect these shield generators. And if everyone dies and no one's protecting the generator and the generator dies, then yes, you'll fail. But there's no like arbitrary, oh, everyone died, restart the mission kind of failure in this game. So, with that said, I'm actually going to go into great detail now. I picked 3 TFOs, and I'm going to play them and talk about what type of mechanics they use. And you can extrapolate this to how the rest of the TFOs work in the game. I was going to do a guide, even like a quick outline for every TFO, but this video is already really long, and I know people don't watch the full length of these videos anyway, so maybe in the future I'll do like bite-sized guides for specific TFOs or something like that. Yeah. So, the first TFO is Infected the Conduit Elite. And I think just about everyone has played this TFO at some point on normal and advanced. It's basically like the DPS leaderboard map, DPS test map. Includes a lot of densely packed, unshielded targets. It's as close to a practice dummy as we have in the game, basically. And the entire TFO from start to finish is that type 1, just pure damage, kill all the enemies phase. You can kind of split it into 2 parts. The first starting group here that I'm facing will, if I do not kill all of these ships within a certain time period, the mission will fail. And usually one person can't do this. There's a handful of players that can beat this starting part. I hope I can. Guess we'll find out here in a second. Alright, now that that section is done, all you have to do is kill everything on the map as quickly as possible. You can't really fail at this point. There is an optional to stop them from healing the transformer, but the probes no longer heal the transformer, actually. That's been bugged ever since they added the assimilators instead of cubes. So basically, as long as you beat it in the next 15 minutes, which shouldn't be too difficult, you're golden. So I'll just run through that real quick. Alright, so that was just a pure type 1, kill everything as fast as possible TFO. The next one that I want to demonstrate is the Defensive Starbase 1 Elite. So this TFO is a type 2, basically a long time gate. It used to be that it was just an invisible timer and it automatically succeeded at the end of it. You didn't even have to do anything. People were abusing that, so they made some changes, which I'll cover here in a second. But essentially, you have 3 different phases, and they're all identical. But the first phase, you have birds of prey. The second phase adds some cruisers, and the third phase adds battleships, so theoretically increasing the difficulty a little bit with each phase. But basically, the way that they modified it is the initial group of enemies that spawn in. So these 6 birds of prey in this case, if I just wait for this invisible timer to complete, I think it's about 2 minutes and 30 seconds or maybe 3 minutes. I don't have to kill any of these in that amount of time. And then once the timer is expired and I kill these ships, it will prompt the next phase to start. And you don't have to worry about defending anything. They are not going to kill this starbase. This thing actually regenerates health, so it will regenerate its health much faster than they can possibly kill it. See right there, it just popped back up. So they will never kill Starbase 1. It's not possible. I've actually sat in here for hours trying to see if they could get it below 10 million health, and they never did. By the same logic, during the phase where you're defending the evacuating ships, you also don't need to actually defend them. They don't need heals. They have like 1.5 or 1.6 million HP, and they regen. So you can literally just ignore them completely. They don't matter. It's just a fluff objective. I've actually played this a number of times, intentionally trying to get them to kill an evacuating ship because I wanted to see if this was a failure condition. Like if you fail to defend an evacuating ship, does it fail the TFO? And I still do not know, because I have not been able to succeed in getting them to kill an evacuating ship. So I've been talking for a few minutes. Let's see if that invisible timer has expired. And if it has, I should be able to just kill all these ships and it will progress to the next phase. I went a little hair too early, so a new set of enemies spawned in. And I think realistically, if you're in a random queue, this is how it's going to be played. Everybody's not going to go cloak and sit in the corner of the map and have a bathroom break. People are just going to, you know, smash spacebar mindlessly and kill stuff. But, you know, like there's the ship escaping and they're not going to kill it. But I'm not going to waste my time waiting for them because I got the prompt defeat remaining Klingons. As soon as you see defeat remaining Klingons or defeat remaining whatever, just kill everything and that's the end of it. Or the end of that phase at least. Now I can just cloak again. The next phase will be cruisers, but you'll see that they will not be able to kill the friendly ships that are escaping. So I'll give it a few minutes for that invisible timer to expire, and then I will come back and kill these guys. same thing for the last phase. Actually, thanks to this video, I can put a timer up on the screen and we can see how long the last phase is if I just continuously kill them. Should be able to give us a pretty accurate judge of how long you need to wait in between phases. Just in case anybody ever does the solo the way that I'm doing it. There it is, defeat remaining Hungons, and it's over. Just one long time gate. Okay, and the last type of TFO I'm going to cover is Counterpoint Elite. And the reason I picked Counterpoint is because it combines a little bit of all three, but most importantly, it has a couple of the Type 3 interactive or objective-based things that have to be completed. If you don't do them, you will fail. So the first phase is just a Type 1 style kill everything. As soon as everything is dead, it will progress to phase 2. And I'm here on my free-to-play account using the PvP Hydra build, which is ideal for a mission like this, because speed is really important later on. Okay, now we're on to the second phase, where enemies will spawn around Deep Space Nine, but it's basically just a distraction. Completely ignore them, go close the portals. Portals spawn around the far outside. You have to close a minimum of 5 of them in order to not fail. So I'll go do that really quick. You actually don't have to fire a single shot this whole phase. All you have to do is close the portals, and you're done. So I have 5 portals closed. There's still 2 minutes left on the timer, but I don't have to do anything now. Each portal that you close after the limit does award you with 5 marks. So if you're trying to get a lot of marks out of this mission, keep closing portals. Ideally, everyone on the team should be closing portals. No one should be sitting in the middle defending Deep Space Nine, because it doesn't matter. Even if Deep Space Nine gets to 0 health, that's only worth 20 marks. You can't fail. And the same amount of effort of someone sitting there on top of it defending it, if you just went and closed portals, you would get more than the 20 marks worth. So now we just wait out the clock. Okay, so now we're moving on to the third phase, which is where the Terok Nor station will spawn in. And this is another Type 3, and it's a pure Type 3 phase, where you have to interact with something. In this case, you'll be carrying assault teams from our Deep Space Nine to Terok Nor. Basically, you have to deliver at least 15. It says here on the tooltip in the game, that you only need to land 5 required. That is a lie. You have to land 15 or you fail. And this is, again, another one where you don't have to fire a single shot. And in fact, you can actually start beaming up the team and fly across to the other station and immediately beam it down. And while that's beaming down, you can fly back to the station and pick up another team. So you can literally just like fly back and forth as rapidly as possible. And all you have to do basically is press F at either end so that it deploys the team. So I'll do that until I get to 15. You can pretty much ignore all these ships because as soon as the phase is over, they all just despawn anyway. And this is another one of those ones where if someone is just sitting on Deep Space Nine defending it, or someone is sitting at Terok Nor attacking it, they're not helping you. They're not helping the mission. They're not doing anything useful at all. Every assault team that gets run gives you an extra 5 marks. If you reduce Terok Nor below 50%, it just auto heals. So the most you can get is probably 9 or 10 marks from damaging Terok Nor. And the most you can get from defending Deep Space Nine is 20 if it's at 100% the entire time, which it probably won't be. So you're looking at like 15 maybe for that. So in this, 6 minutes or 8 minutes or however long you have to run teams, if all 5 players on the team are just doing this the entire time, you're going to get a huge, huge amount of marks. Like if one person, if me alone, and I'm just, I'm flying quickly, but I'm not going super fast. I'm going to land 15 teams on my own and still have 3 minutes to spare. If I land 20 teams, and every other player also lands 15 to 20 teams, that is going to be a humongous amount of marks, way more than you would get just parked on top of Deep Space Nine defending it or whatever. So, do the objectives. I feel like that's like the theme of this video. Do the objectives. Read the mission briefing. Okay, and now we're on to the final phase. I'd call this like a Type 1 damage phase, but you really have 2 options. You can kill all of the enemy ships, but if you look at this very closely, it says defeat reinforcement groups 0 out of 2, and there's a timer. You actually don't have to kill all of these ships. I think, if I remember right, I'll pick on some small ship. I think you just need to kill 2 ships, and then you don't have to kill the rest of them. It'll still complete for you. It might still complete for you even if you don't kill anything. I kind of want to check that, but we'll see what happens after I kill this one escort here. No, okay, it didn't add one. So that is going to wait for me to kill the whole group. But yeah, even if you don't kill these within the time limit, it's still going to complete the mission successfully. So you don't actually have to do anything. Actually, I mean, really, once you've run the 15 assault squads, you can basically stop playing. So, again, not the most engaging content, but there's not a lot of engaging PvE content in general, honestly, so, which is kind of a shame, but that's a topic for another video. Alright, and there it is. Mission success. You can see the marks here. So 4 marks per portal, 4 marks per assault team. And then the remaining hull cap's all that matters. In fact, the final battle there isn't even part of it, whether you kill those ships or not. All killing those ships does actually is end the mission slightly faster. So, all right, that's basically it. I originally wanted to cover every TFO, but at the moment, I don't even know which TFOs are actually in the random rotation, and the video is already super long. So I think that as time moves forward and they add and remove TFOs from the rotation, maybe I'll do some more bite-sized guides on those. But you should be able to figure out from the 3 that I showed you. Every other TFO basically falls into one of these categories. Like Azure Nebula, you don't have to kill anything. All you have to do is free the ships. That's it. You could literally go into there with no weapons equipped and still beat it. On the other hand, something like Pavo, Peril over Pavo or Draenor Gauntlet, you have to protect enemies while they continuously spawn up until a time limit. That's type 2, right? So they all fit into one of these basic categories. Okay, so I also am planning to do a little bit of a ground video, so I can talk about my ground build. You might have seen earlier in the video when I was on my first character, I was running a lot of debuffs. I had, if you go to the dilithium store actually and temporal modules, this causal entanglement, it prevents you from sprinting, but all enemies within 10 meters get this massive damage resistance debuff, and it's higher actually when you're on ground. I'm in space right now, so it's not showing me the exact accurate stats. But that's literally 6,000 dilithium, so less than a day of grinding, and you can have it. And super effective. Gravitational juncture, motion accelerator, motivation if you're fancy, that kind of thing. But like, there's so many easy ways to just ground builds are so much simpler than space because you don't have as many abilities. You just have like your kit modules and then your weapons and armor. And it's really simple. So it's easy to put together a good build for that. And the ground TFOs themselves are a little easier. I think people they're able to think a little more logically. Like when you're on ground and it's like, use this console to open a door, people kind of understand that. They walk up to the console and they press F. I don't know what it is about being in a spaceship when it's like, activate this thing to proceed, and people just do not press F. Just, again, do the objectives. If you find that you enjoy Elite TFOs, working as a team or working on builds that have more considerations besides just damage, you're actually using other mechanics of the game, and you enjoy that kind of thing, I have to mention that you might enjoy PvP. It is a small but dedicated community, and we will help you. I do some small giveaways, and we have like a crowd fund, and a couple of other fleets also do the same kind of thing. So just find a good group, start working on a PvP build, and jump into that, and you can sort of experience some of the lesser used mechanics. And honestly, it'll open your eyes to just how good PvE could have been in this game if they had expanded the enemy abilities a little bit more, or maybe made it so that enemies got extra abilities the higher rank they are or something. Like, it'd be great if in Elite, if a Borg cube, for example, say it has Fire at Will 1, whether it's normal or Elite, it's stupid. It should be like Fire at Will 1 on normal, and then Fire at Will 3 on Elite, plus some other ability, Suppression Barrage, or Subnuke, or Superior Area Denial on the carrier boss at the end of the cure. Can you imagine if we had to actually fight a boss that like used heals and abilities? I think it would piss a lot of people off because you'd have to actually use your brain and do the objectives, but it would have made the game a lot more exciting to play, quite frankly. So, all right. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.